Hi everyone, it's Roger and James here from the What's on Disney Plus podcast. This is episode number 95 and we're recording on the 29th of August 2020. So let's jump into what we're going to be talking about this week. We're going to be talking about the box office and Disney Plus and streaming and just the whole conversation really about what's going on right now with that whole situation. We'll be talking about the pricing of Mulan, the international release of that. We'll be talking about maybe the possibility of future premiere releases, and also we're talking about some other bits and pieces that are going to be coming to UK and other Disney Plus news. Before we go into any more of that, just a big thank you to all of our patrons and also YouTube channel members. So a big thank you to Jacob, Sarah, Joshua, The Juice, What's on Netflix, Andrew, Julie, Lauren, and also Drew, and for all of your support. You can join from about $2 over either on Patreon, or you can do it on YouTube as well, where you can hit the little join access. You get to ask me questions for the weekly Q&A show, and also you get extra bits and pieces as well. So I just want to put that one out there. But let's jump into it. So this, obviously, we're just under a week away now from Mulan coming to Disney Plus as Premier Access. Now, this week they also announced the international pricing. For example, here in the UK, it's going to be priced at $19.99, while in Europe it will be priced at $21.99. But it also will not be coming to France because of their existing streaming laws. That works out about $27. So I know, the currency rates right now are fluctuating quite a lot. So that's why so while it's $30 in the US, I think 35 in Canada, same as 35 in Australia, and also 39 in New Zealand. So different prices, but they all tend to work out about $27. So for some reason, America is having to pay a little bit more, but a lot of that is down to currency fluctuations, as I said. So that one's about to be hitting Disney Plus, and there's a lot of pressure really on Mulan to see where this goes, how it does for Disney, because ultimately they just released New Mutants in the cinemas this weekend, and well, the numbers aren't great. And we've got Tenet as well from Warner Brothers has just reopened, and we've had Unhinged, and let's just say they're not taking a lot of money at the box office. For example, I think Unhinged only took $4 million. Internationally, we're even though cinemas are open up worldwide, they're just not taking a lot of money. A lot of the people not going. I know I looked to go to see New Mutants this weekend at my local cinema, and when I did, every single showing was completely empty. Not that I want to go, and I'm not planning on going. I'd much rather pay the money. While I not necessarily 100% agree with the Premier Access system, I do think it's the best thing for me right now. But James, moving on. So what about New Mutants? What's it like over in the States with New Mutants at the minute?
I can only speak to my local theater. I don't know the broad situation, though I could probably take a pretty educated guess at it. Just speaking from my local theaters, I also took a look at the tickets. I didn't have any serious interest in actually going, but I wanted to see were people buying tickets, and in fact, no, people are not in my area buying tickets. I've got two local theaters. Both of them were showing it. Different chains, so it's not like overlap or anything. And I think out of the 10 different screenings I checked for Friday, there were a total of 3 tickets sold at the time I checked. Now, granted, that doesn't take into account people who make a spontaneous decision. They're at the mall that the theater is at, and maybe they walk in and see it. But I can't imagine that's a huge crowd. I think at most we're talking maybe 10 more people total spread out between 10 showings. If that is kind of an indication of what it looks like more broadly, some states will have more people because they're taking this less seriously. Other states will have less people because they're taking it more seriously. Averages out. That's kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously California and New York cinemas are still closed. So that's actually a massive issue. For example, here in the UK, if you go to cinema, you have to wear a mask. So if you're drinking or eating, you don't have to wear one, and they're doing the whole social distancing thing. I know some people that have gone and seen movies and stuff, and they say they feel fine. There was a video went up this week. Tom Cruise went off to see Tenet at the cinema and was surprised he got recognised in his mask. But right now, I mean, there was an advert on TV last night showcasing all the stuff that's coming to cinemas and lots of reruns and just saying, love your cinema, go back and all the way. And they're just trying to build up confidence. New Mutants looking here. The first bit of information is in the US, the box office for the Thursday previews was $750,000. That was what it took, which obviously is not a lot. This is the thing. Disney, I think, have thrown New Mutants out as the canary in the coal mine. They knew that things were going to be bad, and I think they knew they had to try something. And New Mutants is a movie that they already didn't have faith in. They didn't like. They've pushed back multiple times. They just want to get it out there. So in some way, New Mutants made the perfect one to throw out there. And also, and I think this is the thing that we have to look at. What is it going to meet their expectations of what they were expecting? Because if not, this would change, I think, the whole fall and winter schedule going forward. And they've got another movie coming. They've got a couple of other movies coming out in September, including the David Copperfield movie. So they'll be watching all of these to see what's going on. And I think this will ultimately impact what happens with Black Widow and Soul, depending especially on what happens with Mulan next weekend. If they pull in the money on Mulan, I can bet that there's much more conversations going on.
We'll come back to that one in a second because that's a whole topic by itself. But I don't think they're actually watching New Mutants all that closely. There's a certain amount of canary in the coal mine, obviously, going on here. But I think that they were fully aware that this was going to go out to die. It wasn't maybe it'll do okay. We just want to see how badly it's going to get massacred at this point. Additionally, we'll talk about the investor call in coming weeks as we get closer to it. But I think this also relates to that. This gives them perfect plausible deniability to go in front of investors and go, yeah, well, we tried with New Mutants and people just aren't ready yet. It's not nobody's fault. It's certainly not the movie's fault. It's just a bad environment because they talk differently to customers than they do to stakeholders.
The other thing as well is you've got to look at it of this also could get them off the hook with cinema chains as well for a while. Because they can turn around and go, well, we tried to give you something, but you just don't have the customers. And they can kind of they'll use a few movies because they've moved back the Kingsman. That was supposed to be coming out in September. They've already shifted that one back to February. So they're still reshuffling dates even now because they looked at that one and went, yeah, we want this one to make money. And that's, they're still doing stuff. Literally now, the next big Disney movie now, we've got Black Widow and Soul in November. You've got a few Fox Searchlight movies coming in, but Disney's got nothing else on the plate for another 2 months.
Well, why don't we transition that into Mulan? Because I think, as you alluded to, both Soul and Black Widow are going to weigh very heavily on how Mulan performs next week.
Yeah, this is kind of it's a really interesting one because if you look at the online reaction to it, there's a lot of people that are 100% against this. They don't like it. They don't want it to be a test. They don't want it, they're asking people not to buy it. They don't want things happening. And they said, and it's a bit like this weird thing of going, had this been released on iTunes instead of Disney Plus as a premiere, would it have gained the same noise? I think there would have been people going, oh, well, it should have come to Disney Plus first. There's a lot of talk of going, I don't want to pay more for it. And it's a bit like, yeah, Disney kind of set themselves up with moving Artemis Fowl and the one and only Ivan. They kind of, and even in some respect, even Onward, they've set that tone of going, well, if we can't make it to cinemas, you get it for free, or we just delay it. Well, they've reached a point where they can't keep delaying. I understand why Mulan are doing it from a business point of view, and I look at it very much like, had it been released in cinemas or on iTunes, it probably wouldn't be on Disney Plus until 3 months to maybe 6 months from now. That's and under normal circumstances, had the movie only just been released in cinemas in March, it would only just about hit in Disney Plus probably November time anyway. And had it been released in cinemas this week, I wouldn't expect to see it on Disney Plus until maybe January, February. And that's we've kind of, I think over the last 5 months, we've kind of forgotten how the system was working before it because we've kind of got used to everything just dropping onto Disney Plus. And in some way, like here in the UK, we got Frozen 2 in July. We still haven't got Onward here yet. It's still in cinemas. I think it's still the second or third best box, still taking money at the cinema because the people that are going, Onward is still showing there. We still not got it here because it shouldn't have been on Disney Plus for a few more months. So it is that kind of weird thing of, I think Disney skewed expectations for how quickly movies would arrive during the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think people who are looking at this and going, this should be like the one and only Ivan or Artemis Fowl. Just drop it onto Disney Plus. Give us a bone on this. They're either not arguing in good faith. They understand that there is a massive difference between Black Widow and Ivan, and they just want it for free, which I get. We all want things for free. Or they don't understand how business works, and or this specific business works, and they don't get that. Yeah, there are movies that are made on lower budgets. There are movies that are made on bigger budgets, and they're treated differently. That's always been true. That's not specific to this. So I generally don't really engage with people who like it should just drop onto Disney Plus.
Yeah.
No, I do agree, however, that things would be different if it was on iTunes, if it was on Amazon, Google Play, whatever other services. There is something different about saying, no, this is specific to Disney Plus. You have to pay for it on top of the subscription. And you have to keep paying the subscription if you want to maintain access to it, even though you paid for it. There's a lot to unpack in that. And it's not a great look, if we're being honest about it.
I think the trouble is, I think Disney Plus has kind of been set up as this budget streaming service that everyone's looking at and going, oh, this is fantastic, cheap price. We get everything we want, and we all want more. And you look at what like HBO Max is doing at their price, and you're looking at Netflix and other ones, they all are much more expensive than Disney Plus. So, you look at, we've got, in August, we have had four new original movies all drop onto Disney Plus. We had Magic Camp, we had the one and only Ivan, the new Phineas and Ferb movie, and also Howard. Now, in all honesty, probably all four of them probably would have the same budget as Mulan. It's just, it probably costs just as much to make all four of them as Mulan. And that's why Mulan is in a different position, is because the budget is so much higher than everything else. Yes, Mulan probably would Mulan bring in a lot more subscribers to Disney Plus? Don't know. The trouble is right now, there's a whole other issue with Mulan, and it is a nightmare really, because like Disney have essentially got to that point of they can't keep pushing back. So it's going to be interesting how all this works, because, if Mulan, we look at like Trolls and a few of the other movies that Universal have released, they've all had really good numbers because people are starved for content. And that's going to be happening right through the fall, where we've got much less to watch, and you want to watch it. It's like now I'm thinking on Friday, after we finish work and we've had our tea, we're going to sit down and we're going to watch Mulan. We're going to watch it, and it's like, I'm going to pay. I think for me, the $19.99 that went just a little bit lower than I was expecting. So therefore now it's like, oh, okay, it would have cost me a $5 to go on cinema, and then it would have cost me $5 to park, and then if my wife went, then we're looking at 15. So even just on watching it once, it would have cost me 15 quid for the two of us to go cinema. So it's not a huge amount in it, and that's going to our budget cinema. There are lots of cinemas that are a little bit more pricey. So for me, I'm going, that's not too bad, really. I think had it been $29.99 over here, I probably would have been a bit more like, no.
What would $29.90 be? $29.90 be? How much would that be in America?
Right, 29 English pounds into the dollar would be nearly $40.
Yeah, that's absurd. I've already stated like $30 is too much for me. But that's because I'm watching it alone. Yeah. You get to split the cost with your wife. Even if you're paying the whole thing, at least you can say two people are watching it. If either of my sisters were going to watch it with their spouses, that cuts the cost. Nieces, nephews, all that helps to alleviate the cost as well. So, $30 or whatever it ends up being elsewhere. It's all situational. It all depends on your current thing, and we don't know what the price would have been if they'd put it on iTunes, because
it would have been. I think it would have been. If it was I think the only difference would have been if it had been the same. It might have been about the same price, but you've only had access for 48 hours, I think they were doing one of the movies that they released. I think Bill and Ted. I think it's $20 to rent and $25 to buy. So
I don't think that they're actually that's one of those economic theories where they're like, oh, it's just $5 more to buy. So where they twist you. It'd be a bit different if it was 20 and 30. Then you'd be like, well, $20, that's a $10 difference. I'm only going to watch it once. All right, we'll go with the 20. But 20 and 25, you're like, whatever. I'll just own it. Who knows? I'll watch it again some point. But we don't know how it would have gone for Mulan. Would they have pushed the $30 price? Would it have pushed down to a $25 or $20 price? I suspect they would have gone 30 no matter what they were released on. But it still has that, well, I own it, and I own it until Apple Music goes away, which is probably not anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other kind of argument. People going, I would like to buy the Blu-ray versions. And I know, obviously, in the US, when you buy the physical version, you also get the digital version. It doesn't happen over here in the UK. So I haven't kind of got it. I haven't really purchased hardly any movies digitally because it's just, I'll be honest, there's a little bit on the lines of, I'm going to get stung on whichever platform I go for is the one that's going to end up going bankrupt or something. I'm just like, I've just given, I'm happy. The streaming system, I think, because again, I've had Disney Life for about 3-4 years before Disney Plus. So I've kind of, the concept of the vault being available to me, I've had for about 4 or 5 years now. So therefore it's kind of got to that point of while I do own a load of DVDs, I haven't brought one in over a year, and I wouldn't be buying anyone now because I've got used to them being available at any given point for years now. And I don't think that's going to change. And if they do change, then so be it. But I don't tend to go back and watch library content that much anyway. I like new stuff. I like watching new things. And yeah, I think that's the difference of the physical version.
I agree with that. Like if I'm buying it physically, it's something I'm going to watch multiple times. I own the Marvel movies. I own most of the Star Wars movies. I own The Right Stuff, the movie, things like that. I know I'm going to watch them repeatedly, so it makes sense. I'm sorry, little tangent for when you were talking there. It reminded me a couple of years ago. I finally convinced my parents to throw away their Betamax movies. They didn't even own a Betamax player. I don't think we owned one this century. Like we're going back to the 80s, but. And I swear they're not hoarders, but they were just like, well, we might watch these someday. I'm like, you're not going to watch them. Get rid of them.
Yes. Yeah. I remember having that conversation with my wife when we were moving in together. I was like, boxes of video. Darling, we don't have a video machine. Yeah. So, well, why are we keeping all these videos? Yeah, well, and I mean, I've got to be honest, Betamax was great because back in the day, it was like when I was a teenager, you could get around the VHS copy protection with a Betamax. my cousin showed me, and I mean, I was like 12, 13. I couldn't afford video. I didn't have it. Just stacks and stacks of, and my cousin had worked out that it worked, and it was a kind of one of those things of like, for me, Betamax is always like, oh yeah, that was a cool thing. I was using technology that was old at the time, and getting around it, and it's like. I mean, there's probably people that the Betamax. It's like we're going back. I dread to. I mean, it was technically better quality than VHS, but it was the same thing. My mum was asking about DVD, and she goes, "Well, can I borrow your laptop?" No, mum, they don't have any DVD drives on them. And it was like, "Well, how am I going to watch this video?" It's like, "Well, I don't know. I don't know why did they sell it to you on a DVD?" I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. There's that kind of thing I always find with this physical thing of having gone through Betamax, VHS, DVD, HD DVD, Blu-ray. I'm kind of at the thing of going, yeah, these physical things, they all sound great in theory that you've got them for life, but I haven't. I've brought Star Wars so many times over and over again. It's like, yeah, no, my new way is through Disney Plus.
Yeah, so one last story, and then we'll get back on this. This is my go-to, like, technology always changes story. Second grade, we're talking like 1980 something here. We're in my first computer class. This is where I learned what computers are. The teacher hands all of us 5 1/4 floppies.
Oh, yes.
The big ones. And the teacher gets up at the front of the class, and it's like, if you take care of this floppy, it'll last you through college. Like, it didn't even last me through freaking grade school. It was replaced by 3.5s. We had zip drives. I don't think I could even even if I still had the floppy, I don't think I would be able to find a way to read it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, my first computer, I had the 5.5 inch floppy disk, and I used to go to college at my computer class with my little box full of those, boxes and boxes of floppy disks, and that's it. I think, and maybe that's the difference of feeling like these formats are so, they come and go. Nothing lasts. I remember going in and walking around my MVC and HMVs looking at Laserdiscs going, oh, when I get a real job, this is why I'm going to buy this, because this is the future.
They're like this big. I mean, you could like cook a pizza on them because they were so big.
I mean, I remember when DVDs came out and I was buying them for, in the special section of the store, and they were like $25. And you're going like, this was back in the 90s, and it's like this, and it's like with I haven't brought any HD DVD or any of the 4K Blu-rays. My Xbox can play them, but it's just along the lines of, I am not buying these movies again. And I was just like, no, and I think that's the thing of like this whole thing, like with Mulan, of like, you're gonna buy it, it's like, well, and you don't have it for life. I've done this so many. I don't know. I think I've just got to the thing of like, what's going to really happen with me, Mulan? I'm probably going to watch it 3 times. That'll probably be better. I will, yeah, and that's it. And I don't know. It's just, for me personally, I know how I am with formats, and so I'm looking at like Mulan at £20 and going, okay, I've been wanting to watch this movie. I think had it been another, had this been Cinderella or Maleficent, maybe not, but if it had been like Cinderella or Beauty and the Beast, I wouldn't be buying it. I'm looking forward to Mulan because of how it looks. It's a movie that's appealing to me of what I like. Same thing. Had you said that to me with Aladdin, I probably wouldn't. I really enjoyed that movie, but I probably wouldn't have pulled the trigger on it so quick.
Yeah, there's certainly that to it as well, and that's going to be a big part of what comes from let's call it the Mulan experiment here. At what level are they going to start putting movies out on this service from this? Because if they make enough money, you can expect Black Widow will come on here, but will Soul come on here? Will some of the movies that are farther down the line, like I would say The Kingsman, but obviously that's not coming to Disney Plus. That's way too mature for it. But as an example, would that be the kind of thing that would show up on here? Or are they going to be like, nobody's going to pay $30 for that movie. Let's do a different distribution. And
well, this, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Carry on. I was going to say, this is the thing of this idea of Premier Access. Bob Chapek has said it's a one-off. And a lot of people kind of going, they haven't built this entire system up and planning it if it's a one-off. Maybe if it fails miserably, it'll be a one-off. But I have a feeling that regardless of what goes on from now on, Premier Access is going to be part of Disney Plus as part of its system. However, I think we are going to see a little bit of a difference of when maybe, I don't even know, right? So let's go on the old system now of, say, for example, The Rise of Skywalker. Let's take that as an example. Came out in cinemas, and it was available to purchase, I think it was about mid-March on digital platforms. That could have been a point where it could have been a Premier Access on Disney Plus. I put it on there at maybe the same price or a little bit cheaper. They could have put it on there and go, well, it's going to be available here for 3 months early before it arrives on Disney Plus for everybody else. Maybe not necessarily priced at $30, but that's the way I'm looking at it, going, well, this could just become part of their like home video release schedule. They'll just start popping it on there for a few months first. The other issue going forward is, are they going to follow like what Universal have done with AMC, where cinemas only get a 17-day exclusive window? So therefore, something like New Mutants could come to Disney Plus as Premier Access in 3 weeks' time, and get around it that way. I know a lot of people might say the HBO different if it's painful. That's the key issue there. We know those are the two things I'm looking at with Premier Access as the future.
Yeah, and I'll say this for everyone listening, this is actually a choice that you get to make. All of us get to make. There is probably no release in recent memory, probably not even back to like 2000 or before, where Disney is going to be watching this so very closely. So if you feel strongly about this, one way or another. You think Premiere Access, I get a theatrical quality movie for $30. I get to keep my kids entertained for weeks for just $30. This is fantastic. Then buy it. If you are on the other side of the fence, you go, this is a terrible idea. I cannot support this at all. There are problems with it. I don't want to have to pay the subscription, whatever. Then don't buy it. Every single vote in this is going to count. And you can talk about it on Twitter. You can talk about it on Facebook. You can be, this is awful. You can rally, boycott, censor, or buy, or whatever. At the end of the day, it's going to be the purchases. And that's going to determine pretty much everything moving forward.
And the big thing is, for me, it's not even just that right now. Is I think they are looking at what's going to be happening with cinemas. Is they are not expecting to have any major blockbusters hit $1 billion for maybe a year or two. Right? There is no movie that is going to pull in the audiences that it needs to. The days of a packed theater, we ain't going to be seeing that, at least right through probably till next year at some point. So therefore, this is the problem. Now, I just wanted to bring up something a little bit of. This is where the big numbers comes in. So, for example, in August last week in the US, the US box office took $6 million. $6 million, which was up nearly $6 million from 5 weeks before that, when there was nothing out, when there was hardly any cinemas open. Right, you go back to February, we're looking at numbers between 100 million and 190 million. Some weeks in January were nearly over 200 million. So even on like last week, with cinemas being open, they took, some of them being open, they took 6 million. In January, they were taking 100 to 200 million. That is the difference of why studios are looking at, because if they can make 50 million through Disney Plus, or if they can make that money through video on demand, they are making that money out. Every business is having to adapt. And this is not just Disney, every single business. I know the way you work has changed, where my business has changed. We're all having to change. And this is going to be something that moving forward, that the days, that old cinema release schedule, they can't use for the next 2 years. As much as Disney want to go back to it, Universal doesn't. This is going to keep changing. And these movies, they are going to have to come out on video on demand systems. So they're going to be going to the cinema owners going, you can either share it with us or you're not having it, because they are just going to be going, now the people aren't going. You can have it at the cinemas, but we need to be able to sell it elsewhere. And I think we're just going to see that. And the cinemas are going to be given the choice of, studios don't need the cinemas, but the cinemas need studios. And as much as the studios like the money coming from the cinemas, right now they aren't providing that, so they'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's also important to say, the entire month, earlier in the year, that's like $190 million. We're in the middle, we're at the end of the summer season.
Yeah.
Summer season, if a movie doesn't make 190 million, like a brand new opening movie doesn't make 190 million in the opening weekend alone, it's normally a failure at this time of year. I mean, obviously they're going to be the small movies, but we're talking about the weekend blockbusters, and there's normally a weekend blockbuster like every day or every week from May to August. Sorry, go ahead.
Last year for the same week, they took 123 million, and that's in the US. Okay, so that was the same week last year. So, but just pure like for like, week for week, there was over $100 million difference between what was available. Now, obviously, there's not a lot of movies out, and there are some differences, but that is the problem of what New Mutants is coming up again. Let's say New Mutants gets 4 or 5 million in. Yeah, it might have pulled in 50 million, and it still would have been considered a flop. It still would have been, oh, that's awful. But if they can only pull in a few million, this is what they're looking at. And Tenet is going to have a bit. This is the one. That's what they're all watching. They're all watching to see what happens with that one.
I think they were really hoping that Tenet would pull people into theaters, and I know it'll do better than most other movies would have launched under the same circumstances, but it's not going to do anywhere near the numbers that they wanted it to. Also, worth keeping in mind, we're talking about general box office numbers here. You apply it to Mulan. They were expecting Mulan to make over $1 billion total, not opening weekend, obviously. And right now, my guess is they're really just checking to see that they're going to get their money back as an investment on Mulan at this point.
So this is just some examples of some things here. So last July, we had The Lion King. So the week The Lion King came out, the domestic box office for the whole of the US was 374 million. It was 200 million the following week and a little bit after that. So that was that week. Toy Story 4 come out, was about 300 million. Aladdin was 270 million. Avengers Endgame, we're looking here at 526 million. This is, we're talking hundreds and millions, and now we're talking, they're not even hitting double digits. And the box office numbers is how many people are going. I know, like you said, places are down, but if you have a cinema, and I know this with my business in the real world right now as well, you have a cinema and you have 100 seats and you take away 50 to 60 of them for social distancing, you are instantly 50 to 60% down on total capacity on your, on a full house instantly. That's before you've even taken into the account that trying to get people in, and that's ultimately the problem. Cinemas are going to have, there'll be less on and they can have more screens showing the same movies. But, when you're hearing of like things like Empire Strikes Back and, Avengers all being in cinemas, they're pulling in some money. But, I know a friend of mine, he went and saw, I think it was Tenet the other day at the cinema, and I've seen quite a few people saying they've gone off and it's been empty and it's quiet. But there's also that whole thing as well of, as we're going into this winter, things are going to go up. Ultimately, the amount of people that are affected are going to go up, and it's going to get worse. So I think Mulan really is, if this does well, I think, Soul, I think, is definitely a prime target if Mulan does well. Black Widow might be able to pull it in, but they know they can get all the Marvel fans. Doing it.
To be honest, if Black Widow launches at a $30 price point and the same, I would probably buy it. Most of the Marvel movies, with the exception of, I think, Far From Home, I normally watch in the theaters twice. That no particular reason. I just enjoy them enough that I go and see them twice. That would probably be the same for Black Widow. So it makes financial sense. Well, I'd still prefer to go see it in the theater, but I could at least justify it to myself. Go, I'll watch it twice. That means $15 a show. Okay. But like you said, it really will depend on how Mulan does. And if Mulan, they break even, they'll call it a win, and they'll probably say, oh, we'll do it for the mid upper tier, something like Soul, and Black Widow will kind of hold out hope that we can do this properly at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think just moving forward, we've just got to, there is going to be a change. I'm just looking here. I wanted to see what else we've got coming up. So the Kingsman that's been moved. Death on the Nile is probably next big one, which is the 9th of October. So that's going to be, that might even, again, because things can change between there. So that might be to see how that goes in the middle. But yeah, I don't know, because it might be willing. There is also the other thing as well of, there's a difference between adults that will go, and then there's a difference between families that will go as well. Because, I mean, obviously, a lot of schools are going back and all the rest of it. But will a family want to go see a movie together? Would they want to take the risk with everybody? Whereas an adult on its own might look at going, and there is that difference as well of like whether or not a family would go compared to, a sort of a younger person that maybe wants to go.
Right. Like I wouldn't necessarily be like, yep, I'm going to take the nieces and nephews. We're going to go see Death on the Nile this week. I feel like that's a good way to waste 2 hours and several tickets worth of money, plus all the accompanying food as well. That's not a commentary on Death on the Nile. It's just simply, I don't think kids are going to enjoy that one so much.
Yeah. So moving on from there a little bit, Disney actually I've teamed up with a company out in Australia, and they're going to be doing a drive-in cinema, and it's being publicized as a Disney Plus experience. And they're going to be doing it in Brisbane from the 17th of September through to October, before moving on to Sydney, where they'll be there from 22nd of October to the 15th of November. Then they'll be moving on to Melbourne. Now, they've not announced any dates for Melbourne or anything like that, because currently Victoria is in lockdown due to more things going on. So nothing's open. They can't run anything. So that's why the Melbourne ones probably haven't been announced yet, because they just don't know if they will be able to run that, because right now there's nothing going on in Victoria. Now they're going to be showing so many different movies, like pretty much like nearly every night is a completely different movie. They're doing, you take your car in, you pay one price if there's two of you. If there's three of you, you have to pay a little bit more. They're doing special theme nights like Marvel Mondays and Star Wars Wednesdays. And yeah, this is just kind of like a really kind of weird thing of like, they're doing something, it's connected to Disney Plus, people can get out and watch a movie. I was a bit like, okay, this is like a really weird, because the thing is for Australia, they're going into their spring and summer, so it's just the weather's starting to get nicer. I mean, there's been some snow down in Victoria recently, but they're going into the summer, so therefore they're going into the nicer weather, so therefore they can go through the winter and have for us, we're now starting to go into autumn, fall, things are starting to change, it's starting to get colder. They're doing drive-ins and stuff near us for like the Lion King and all these different things. But then, the other night, my sister-in-law couldn't go to the drive-in cinema because it was raining. We had, and that actually was, they cancelled the event. This is why drive-ins don't work in the UK in the very well.
Well, it is largely dependent on local climate.
Yeah.
There's a couple of drive-ins not that far from me. I actually just looked one up while you were talking. I'm like, oh, are they active right now? And it's actually showing Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home as a double feature. I'm like, oh, maybe I should go and get my double showing of Far From Home in. So keep that record going.
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned in previous podcasts, at least out in the Midwest area, they've kind of had a resurgence during this because you can feel secure. You're in your own car. You're not, air conditioned, refreshed air, sharing everything, all that fun stuff. It's probably not that popular right now because a lot of the Midwest is kind of on fire at the moment. I have not been going outside because even though I'm not near the fires, the air quality is horrific. We just finally got some rain, so it cleared up a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, and again, you've had that awful hurricane just go through like Louis, there's all these different things, and that's the problem with outdoor events. And I don't know, it was just very interesting to see how Disney have kind of done this in Australia with these drive-ins events and teamed up with them. I mean, it's just an interesting thing. And again, we're probably at that point now where we're 5 to 6 months from the start of this whole pandemic. So therefore, planning, people are trying to think outside the box. But ultimately, they're doing a Disney Plus drive-in. Moving on from there, the UK, we've got the official list of what's coming to Disney Plus in the UK. Not as much in the US as per normal, but there was a couple of very good movies coming. And these are also going to be coming to other countries as well, except for the US. We've got Spies in Disguise. It's going to be dropping on Friday the 11th. I know that's going to come to Australia the following week. Whereas on the 25th we're going to be getting the Call of the Wild with Harrison Ford, which came out just as all this stuff was starting to happen back in February. So we're getting two great new Fox movies that I've not seen either of them, and I've wanted to watch both of them. We're also getting Horton Hears a Who. That one's going to be coming to like Canada and America as well. So we're getting a couple of good movies. So I'm going to be honest. I'm looking at September's lineup and going, yeah, that's pretty good. Two movies I've not seen before that are 6 months since they were at cinemas. And a lot of people are asking about Onward and going, well, these movies came out December and February, and now we're getting them in September. So that's the time frame. But it's nice to see, how these 20th century studio movies would be arriving on Disney Plus had you not had that HBO contract.
Yes, and while they're not available in the States, I do know that Spies in Disguise, at least, is generally readily available for rent through the normal services. I even saw it at my library the other day. They had a number of copies kind of sitting on there. So maybe I'll check that out.
It's coming to HBO Max, I think, on the 5th of September. So it is coming to HBO Max in the next coming weeks as well. So if you've got that, there you go. So that one is that one. Also, just a little bit of fun news that we wanted to talk about a little bit was this week was Gamescom, which should have been happening in Germany, but obviously the event got cancelled. But they went virtual. We got to see some new content of a brand new Lego Star Wars video game called the Skywalker Saga. And during the announcement, they had said that it would actually also include some DLC character packs from Rogue One Solo, but also The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch, which are both obviously Disney Plus shows. And also, if you do buy some of the new sets like the new Razor's Quest or the Advent Calendar, which is part of the Christmas special, you can get a little code in there and you can play the characters in the game. So they have pushed the game back to spring, which is sad, but yeah, I was just like, oh, we're getting DLC on the Bad Batch and the Mandalorian. It's like, okay, cool. It's like I was a bit like it dropped back, and I'm going, oh. And I looked at the rest of the schedule for the rest of the video games for the winter, and going, yeah, it's probably for the best. Get it.
I was disappointed that it got delayed. I do like the Lego Star Wars games. They're a lot of fun. Even The Force Awakens was a really good game a handful of years ago. But if it means getting some more polish, getting it ready for launch, I'm all for it. Character packs have been a tradition in Lego games for a very long time, so this isn't exactly new. As long as they follow the pricing model that they've had in the past, they're normally a handful of dollars, cup of coffee kind of money. Perfectly reasonable for that. I'm fine with that. It'll be a good way for them to keep going with it, and then potentially, when Kenobi eventually comes out, maybe when they finally get back into making some other content on top of these, they can get added in the future as well. Either way, good news. And I really like the interaction with the actual physical sets. It's not a reason to go buy the set if you weren't. That's a really bad.
That's very expensive DLC.
That's a very expensive way. I'm sure you'll be able to buy some codes on eBay from people who want the set but don't have the game. That's generally pretty easy to do, but it is a nice little bonus if you were already planning on buying those sets.
What's that mean? I mean, I've got the Razor Quest set pre-ordered, so I'll have the code. So I've been imming and ahhing on the every year, I think, with the Advent calendar, that I would be like, you know what, I should do this, and people put it up as their stories or their social media things, and it's like, okay, this year I am going to pull the trigger, but I'm going to do it. But also, so that's kind of wraps up most of the news bit. So before we go into, we both watched the new Phineas and Ferb movie. I watched it last night, and I know you, because both of us, I think we're both in that thing again. We've not really watched the series. We don't really know what's going on. Should we watch this one? And I was like,
I've never watched the series at all. I did want to watch a couple episodes going into this. Sorry, I cut you off there.
Yeah, I've seen 2 episodes, which I watched like 2 weeks ago. I never really knew about the characters until the Disney Infinity video game when the character packs came out. And at the time, we were doing an Infinity podcast, so we brought them because we had to do it. So I watched the movie, and I was a bit like, I was like, what's going on? I'm going, okay, it really does. It kind of has set it up that you really don't have to watch any of them. I did feel like they did a good enough job of like doing it as an intro. You kind of got the gist of, you had a bit of a montage at the beginning of why Candace hates her brothers, and I thought that this like, okay, cool. That kind of explained it enough for me to kind of carry on. I'm like, okay, and the thing of the mum never gets there. I thought they actually did quite a good job of setting the whole thing up, and I mean the whole thing maybe with the supervillain and the platypus was like, okay, I do think, as far as I'm concerned, I watched that movie and I went, okay, I think I got a gist of the whole series now. I kind of get it.
Yeah, going in mostly blind, I was like, okay, I get the setup. I understand where the characters stand in relation to each other. But yeah, that was one weird movie. The way I'm thinking about it is this movie is like the textbook definition of hit and miss. It's rapid fire jokes, like meta jokes, in universe jokes, just randomness all over the place. And I had about a 50-50 hit rate on either me kind of chuckling a little bit and going, that's clever, and the others just like staring at it going, what is going on right now? Why is there an alien elephant in space? What?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit. I'll be honest. I wasn't really kind of watching it in like full blown. I was putting together the videos for last night. I thought I'm just going to put it on in the background because and I was being on it quite a few times. I was just standing there, I was like, oh, I'm actually supposed to be doing some other stuff because I did kind of often get pulled into it, and I was watching it and I was like, yeah, it's funny. I thought if you're a fan of the movie, you're gonna love it. We'd already decided on the website that Jeremy was going to do the review for it because he'd at least seen the series. So I knew I didn't. It was like, well, I'm going to do a written review. So I was like, I'm only going to like watch it and do the podcast. It's like, because if I'm doing a written review, I kind of really try and focus on it and do it properly. It was like, and I watched it and I went, okay. I was like, actually, if I had done a review, it would have been a positive review because I enjoyed it. And I'm not going to watch it again, but I was sitting there going, well, this is like a high quality like episode. It's like an extra long episode. You know, I would imagine the budget on this was because it didn't look good, but then sometimes it did look like they kind of done stuff on it. I mean, there's a whole thing of like when they when they were in the ship and then they ended up having the two guys, I think Dan and Swampy, like talking about it. It's like it was so random. It was so
that one definitely was a miss for me. I know which part you're talking about, but I think they even mentioned in the song, like, we spent all our animation budget on this song. It's like, okay, yeah, meta. Overall, positive. I did enjoy the overall experience, and I think a 50-50 hit rate on the jokes is fine considering how quickly those jokes are coming in. If one misses for you, don't worry, there's another joke right around the corner. And some of them truly were really clever. It was like, all right, that's fun commentary right there. It does not push the priority of watching the television show up any higher for me. I think there was nothing in it where it was like, oh, I have to go back and see what I missed in everything else. I'm not going to not watch it, but it's now not like maybe it'll be the next one, maybe it won't be the next one. I don't know. It depends on what kind of catches my eye. That feels kind of like a backhanded compliment. It's not an insult to the show. It's just I enjoyed it. And I think, as you said, people who have followed the show, who've watched all the seasons, who've watched all the other movies and spinoffs and stuff, honestly, I think they'll love it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I kind of watched it. I thought, I've got no desire to go watch the other ones. I kind of feel like I got the gist of it all and understand it. And I was like, yeah, I liked it. I thought it worked very well. I'm hoping we get to see a lot more of this kind of stuff. I mean, I know there's some other series as well that would quite happily, I think, have a continuation. I mean, I know they're in talks for a third movie, and I'm like, I hope people watch it. I hope people get the numbers up. I hope this one, because this is what, and especially right now where they can make these things from home, because that's what they'll be doing. I mean, if you follow the creator Dan on social media, he is posting wacky videos constantly promoting this. He has been, I mean, you've got to, he has been completely, because I think he plays Dr. Doofus or whatever he's called. And, it's just that kind of thing. I watched this and I thought that was a lot of fun. That was really, this is exactly what Disney Plus needs. Because it's one of those weird things of, if you look at like Disney Plus and everyone talks about it being a kid's thing and it's full of Disney Channel stuff. And this is like the first animated movie or animated thing other than a short that we've had on Disney Plus since it launched. And we thought we would be seeing loads of Disney Plus cartoons and series and stuff moving over. This is the only thing. We haven't seen anything.
Yeah, there's definitely that. And not all of that is COVID related. It was expectations versus what we got in reality. And I would like to see more things like this. Not specifically Phineas and Ferb. Sure, get the next movie. I would watch the next movie if they released it. But just in general, new properties, pull up some of the old properties. Give us Darkwing Duck while you're at it. Actually,
yeah, I did forget they obviously had the Clone Wars, but I don't really count that in the same vein. But I mean, it's that kind of thing of like, with a Darkwing Duck. I know they brought him back for the DuckTales series, but yeah, just as a whole, I was just like, I sort of watched it, was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I think we should have more of this. It's like, and also the kind of quite cool, like 2D drawing animation, like. These are things are obviously, they're not in that same sort of budget zone as, the big movies like Toy Story or anything like that. But I was like, this is such a cool one. I'm really hoping people enjoy it. I liked it. I'm glad I watched it. I kind of got to the end and went, okay, no, I was pleased with it. I was like, okay, that was fine. I mean, so that's always a good thing. I was kind of got to the end and went, that was so much better than I was expecting.
Yeah. I know I've been kind of like wishy-washy 50-50 hit rate, but overall, I enjoyed it. I think most people enjoy it. Just go into it and expect randomness. And of course, if you liked the series, you've probably already watched it or are planning to watch it. You're going to love it if you haven't seen it yet.
Anything else you've been watching on Disney Plus this past week?
I did check out the Muppets. So that was my complaint last week where we had the repetition of the same skits over and over again. They actually had a new section in this one, Masterpiece something or other. There might have been a skit for that for the first episode, but it's far enough apart that it felt new, which was great. It was more like sketch comedy rather than the improv comedy that they've been doing. And honestly, I hope that they take that and do more of that if they get a second season. That, and I finally got around to watching The Greatest Showman, which I really did dig the music in that a lot. The music's catchy. It's designed to be catchy. It's poppy. The story went about as I expected. If I take it as a fictional thing, don't connect it to the real P.T. Barnum, it's fine. Pretty by the number, but fine. Well executed. And I'll just be like, no, there's no connection at all to someone who was absolutely terrible as a human being.
I'll be honest, I'd never even heard of the bloke till the movie came out. So I did no. I mean, I got home from work yesterday. My wife's got the soundtrack on and she's singing. So we've just been loving that soundtrack. I mean, why it didn't get added over here, I don't know. But I
don't know. P.T. Barnum is somebody that I think most kids in America will at least be familiar with. I remember going to the circuit, the traveling P.T. Barnum circus as a kid, seeing the elephants, seeing the animals, all the tricks and stuff like that. I imagine that is very uniquely American. Doesn't make as much sense outside the States.
No, that's the thing. I mean, also this week I've been watching more episodes of Once Upon a Time because we got the first 4 seasons a couple of weeks ago. So I'm working my way through season 1. That one is coming. All 7 seasons are coming to the US in the middle of September. The other 3 seasons are coming onto the UK the first week of September, along with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 6. Which is good because I'm looking forward to that one because I only saw half of season 6 until I got rid of Amazon Prime, so I didn't have access to anything. So I'm like, okay, cool. So at the minute I'm going, okay, cool. I can actually, and it's like weird thing. I can watch normal shows. I can watch like mainstream, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Once Upon a Time will be what I'll be watching. And it's like, rather than it's like, it is kind of quite nice to be able to I just put it on. I think that's it. I'll be honest. I jumped back into Fortnite this week with Marvel, so it was a bit like, So I was just like, even though we got the Marvel video game coming out, I was like, that's such bad timing. I haven't got enough time in the world to play 2 Marvel games at the same time.
Now that you're working again,
I don't like it. I'm not really not like it. I know it's just like everyone hated lockdown. It was like I got so much gaming.
And you reminded me, not this past week, but in the last several weeks, I finished off Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We had the series finale here a couple of weeks ago, so I did finish that off. Wasn't in love with the final season, didn't hate it. It was just kind of a thing. That said, the final episode I felt was a very satisfying end to the series. Not necessarily to the season. It was kind of a very abrupt ending to the season. But for the series as a whole, there were a lot of nice little throwbacks to the beginning, various seasons that you felt like they kind of remembered the history of the show. And it tied a nice little bow around things. You can go, all right, I'm done with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I do hope, I won't spoil anything, but I do hope that some of the final places that some of the characters end up getting referenced elsewhere. There's one major one, which will be very obvious when you see it, where I'm like, please include this in the movies. This is a very important thing that you do. They won't, but it'd be nice anyway.
I think that was the thing. I mean, ultimately, it's not going to be available on Disney Plus in the US for a couple more years. Unfortunately, due to Netflix, they get like a 2-year window from when it ends. So that's the only issue for the US. But I think in some ways, it's nice for them to actually finish it off. I mean, they kind of ended up really kind of splitting season 6 and 7, I think, into 2 seasons to kind of do that. But yeah, it's kind of, I think with the abrupt ending of everything else, it's kind of quite nice that they did actually finish it. You know, and sometimes I really, it's one of the things I really do hate about TV shows of where, you know, they set all this stuff up and they set all the plans up and then they cancel the show, or the show doesn't get renewed, and you never get that often get that ending. So it's nice when you actually do get that. You don't get that very often nowadays. Everything just gets cancelled, and then, well, okay, we'll never find out what happened. You know, the amount of times my wife will stop at a TV show on Sky, and, you know, and I'll turn and go, yeah, it's been cancelled, so should we carry on? We've done that so many times. If I know the show's cancelled before I even start watching, I sometimes won't even like, nah, no point. I'm not investing myself.
I'm kind of that way with Netflix shows at this point too, because so many of them just get canceled abruptly that it's very frustrating to be like, I'm invested in this show and oh, there's no season. Obviously, some continue on, some don't. I mean, the Marvel shows didn't get a proper ending, but they didn't end at a place where you're like, why are you stopping here? I mean, they set up some nice storylines that would have been fun to follow through with, but oh well. But every once in a while you get those shows where it's like, well, it ended on a cliffhanger. You can't end this on a cliffhanger. What's going on? I will say you do occasionally get the other end of the spectrum too, where you're like, the people creating it are, this is the last season.
Yeah.
It is done. And then the directors or the executives come around and like, hey, this is really popular. Make 2 more seasons. Like, we tied everything up. All the storylines are done. It's like, 2 more seasons. And you're like, and they scramble. I'm thinking of specifically like Babylon 5 here, but I know there are plenty other examples too.
Oh yeah, don't. My dad is still watching Babylon 5 every night. He still watches it constantly. 25 years later. I think one that reminded me was I think V. They did that.
Mm-hmm.
They did the remake of V, and that never came back. I think Lost was one, like you said, where it was like they kind of had an idea and then they had to extend it a few seasons, and that's when they got lost, literally, in the idea of they didn't really know what they were doing. I think some of the ones like X-Files was maybe something a bit like that as well, where I remember it kind of getting like the 5th or 4th season going, this is going nowhere. It's just going around and around. On a side note, apparently they're making a new animated series for Fox. One of those weird ones where 20th Century Fox is making, or 20th Century, so Disney are making it for Fox. So it must be some weird contract thing with them, I would imagine.
I don't know. I will say Lost was originally going to be, I think, a 13-episode series, and then it turned out so popular, like, nope, keep going. So that's definitely an example. The Battlestar Galactica remake was another one. It was supposed to be that miniseries, and they got to the end of the miniseries and like, people are watching this, keep going, keep going. And you can definitely tell with both of those shows, whether or not you liked them in the end, whether you were satisfied with the way they ended, there are definitely parts of those shows where you're just like, you guys were literally just throwing stuff on paper to have something ready to go because you were not expecting to have to write this.
Yeah, I mean, I have the other issue of like, I remember like, especially like with the DC shows like Arrow and Flash, where you would get, and I think even sometimes Riverdale and people, where you'd get to like the mid-season bit, where they'd like wrap up the stories and then start like a fresh new story in like the 14th episode because they've got to do another 10 episodes, and you'd always be like, okay, you've been like, this just was weird. And you see it in so many American, and that's why I'm really happy with some of these American shows now, where you're adopting our system of doing much more limited runs, shorter seasons. It just seems to tell us, you have as many episodes as you need to tell the story, rather than trying to fit the 21 or the 22 episodes. And because it's like, and then like the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, I mean, a lot of people, probably only going to be about 4 episodes. I mean, we go, it's so short. I was like, well, I'm looking at going, Sherlock was only 3 episodes a season, and they were fantastic. That's right. And I'd much rather have 3 awesome episodes than 9 dull episodes.
Yeah, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the length. The DC shows are an obvious one because they get out to the 22, 24 episode season, and you like, there is so much padding in this. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was definitely a victim of this too during its longer seasons in the earlier part of it. But even the Marvel Netflix shows had this problem, and they were only 13 episodes for the most part. You're like, you get to the season 1 of Luke Cage, and you get seven or eight or something like, okay, we wrapped up the storyline. Here's a new villain. Like, what? What?
Yeah,
It's literally like two entirely different storylines simply because they had 13 episodes to fill, and you could see it with pretty much all of them except for the Defenders.
Yeah,
now whether 8 episodes, you can say plenty of things about the Defenders. I know a lot of people were disappointed with it, but it was a focused story. There were twists and turns and changes, but it was a story for 8 episodes, and that was it. And it definitely was better for that.
I think that's why, like, when you chose like Smallville and Arrow and stuff, where you had Monster of the Week, that was something that fitted the concept of doing these longer episodes. But with the story arcs, it doesn't work the same, and I think that's where they always come in. But nevertheless, that's a whole lot of a different issue. So again, big thank you again to everyone for joining us. Again, a big thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon and also on the YouTube members. Couldn't do it without you guys. It really does make a big difference, and you can join too. Remember as well, you can follow us over on Facebook. You can either follow us on the Facebook page, or you can follow us in our Facebook group, which has over 135,000 members. And you can also find us on Twitter at Disney Plus News. And again, you can find us on the audio platforms and video platforms like YouTube. And on that note, guys, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you guys soon. Later.